former 98 Rock on-air personality in Tampa, Florida, and 99.9 KISW in Seattle, Washington. His name is Michael Ricker. However, back in the radio days, he simply went by Ricker. Ricker,
Gangster.
What up, dude? Welcome to the podcast, man. Thanks for coming on.
What's happening? It's a pleasure. I appreciate the invite. Privileged to be here with you today.
Likewise,
and,
man.
If you don't remember who I am, it doesn't matter. We'll still have fun.
There you go. Ricker, where you at, man?
I'm in Seattle. I'm in West Seattle, in Mikasa. The dying days here for me in Washington as I'm making the move to Los Angeles in about 2 months to the day, actually.
Oh, cool, man.
So getting my last hurrah here in Seattle. Although the Leaf, what I do now is I publish a cannabis magazine called The Leaf. Is all over the country and soon to be global. And so I'll be coming back here to Seattle quite a bit, and hopefully we'll have a Florida Leaf within the next couple years. And I'll be I'll have a reason to visit Florida as well and beyond. The Leaf is in 13 states right now. On the East Coast, we've got Maryland, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Maine, Massachusetts. Did I forget any? Just a bunch up there. Hey, cool. Guys.
Yeah, man. Oh. Yeah. And we'll talk about LA and the Leaf in just a bit, about your move to LA and the Leaf in just a bit. But Ricker, I mentioned 98 Rock. I mentioned KISW, the station in Seattle. Did I miss any stations?
The Rock of Seattle, 99.9 KISW. And I was on a bunch of stations, man. Those were the two big ones. The most success I had was in those two cities, I'd say. But I was also in Portland at KUFO for a couple years, ending in 2011. I was also voice tracked, kind of the same thing as syndicated, at KSJO, San Jose, San Francisco. I was on WRLX. That was West Palm Beach. That was Dayton, Ohio. I was on a station in West Palm Beach. Pensacola, Florida is my hometown. I was on WTKX, TK101 there. So a pretty prolific rock radio career while it lasted for 20 years.
What was your first station?
My very first, it depends on how far back you want to go. So my father was a radio personality, as well as his older brother, my uncle. And my uncle Joe Ricker came up through the Armed Forces Radio Network as a broadcaster. And when he got out, I believe it was the Korean War, he was hired immediately by CBS out of Norfolk, Virginia. And he kind of rose through the ranks there with Dan Rather, who ended up becoming the CBS nightly news anchor. And my uncle, unfortunately, gravitated to the bottle. And it cost him his career with CBS. And then he ended up doing small town radio in Long Island at WLNG in Sag Harbor for 40 years and became a big advocate for Alcoholics Anonymous in the Veterans Association. And so he was a great influence for me. And then of course my own father was a floating rock radio DJ. And at the age of 5, he took my two brothers and me to Los Angeles from San Francisco to be on the Bozo the Clown show. And I got picked out of the crowd and I won my game. And there I was on TV, a couple months later. And then a couple years later, I ended up doing my first voiceover for my dad's radio station, getting paid $5, and I walked into school one day in a class, I think it was in 4th grade. And the teacher said, "I heard Michael Ricker on the radio this morning driving to school." And the whole classroom turned around and there was little Cindy Lou Who batting her eyelashes. And I thought to myself, man, I got paid $5 large and now I got the attention of the babies. This is what I want to do when I grow up. So that was my first exposure. And then when I was 17, I moved to California to live with my mother and go to high school there and such in the Bay Area. And the high school that I entered miraculously, coincidentally, had the most prolific high school radio station in the state of California. That was KVHS in Concord. And so I really cut my teeth there, and developed kind of a skill, and I had a natural talent that, the staff recognized and such. And then after I graduated, some fellows that were a year ahead of me were ambitious, and they decided to innovate a radio station of their own, but it was cable. You couldn't, they didn't have a license, but you could get it on the cable stations in your home. And so I was paid $100 a week to do middays, noon to 3, while I went to junior college and played on the tennis team, and very busy. But for a year I did that. And really, that was the first radio station that I was on officially. And you know what? It ended up becoming sort of the first satellite radio, sort of the template for it. And, those guys, it didn't work for them, but it was the concept that ended up, being revolutionary through the test of time. And so but I did leave that radio station to go to San Diego State University. And there I studied broadcast journalism and got a degree and did radio at the college station there called KCR. So, that was all kind of amateur radio, so to speak. And then it wasn't until about 5 years later when I moved back home to Pensacola that I accidentally got a radio job and turned that into a 20-year career with a Billboard Radio Award and an R&R nomination that you can see right there.
Yep. Gotcha. Yep.
So yeah, that's how it all started, man.
That's very cool, man. Dude, the Bozo show, did you make it to the, where you throw the ball in the 6 buckets? Did you get that far?
No, it was this past the sombrero, musical sombreros.
Okay.
So instead of musical chairs, you had this big giant sombrero
Gotcha.
on your head. And if it was on your head, you had to pass it to the next guy. And when the music stopped, whoever it stopped on was eliminated.
Okay.
And yeah, I was the last person left, and I'll never forget when I was in the bleachers, Bozo was, kind of scouring the crowd looking for kids to participate in the game. And he looked up at me and he said, "You, that little girl right there." Cause I had long hair and long eyelashes.
Right. Yep.
And I looked like a girl, I guess, to Bozo. And I said, "I'm a boy, Bozo." And the rest is history, man.
That's awesome, dude. Do you have that on VHS?
No, I wish, that was a long time ago. I want to say that was before VHS even existed. But years later, I want to say about 5 years ago, I attended a wedding in Chicago, downtown. And the reception was in the Radio Hall of Fame building. And so I went, we were allowed to tour the actual Hall of Fame upstairs. And, of course, there were tons of luminaries represented there. And they also had a Bozo the Clown exhibit with a bunch of the old costumes and the actors and such. And it was very cool, to see that and think, wow, I was a part of that.
Yeah, that's very cool, man.
I'm a very small part of it, but
yeah, that's pretty wild. Dude, how cool is it that your last name, your real name is Ricker? I mean, how well did that work out for you being a radio guy? I mean, what if you would have been Mike? What if you would have been Mike Johnson? Then what, Ricker? I
would have changed it to something, more appealing. There was a time, when I started my professional career at WTKX in Pensacola, my radio name was Ricker in the Rockin' Chair.
Okay.
And that's what I became known for in Pensacola. I mean, everybody knew it. And I wanted to keep it. And I got fired there and I got hired in Tampa. And, at first I was, part-time. I had to work my way in, but they knew they wanted to make me a full-timer. They just had to figure out a way to let go of the night person. And when she got let go, they, interviewed me and they said, "Look, you're just going to be Ricker." And I said, no, if there's one thing that I hold on to, it's my stage name, and I created it. And well, that's what I'm going to be. And they said, "Yeah, you're going to be Ricker."
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
Yeah. And
otherwise you're not.
Yeah. And it works.
Getting a contract.
Right.
And it worked. Yeah.
Yeah, it works.
So brevity is key, when it comes to branding and messaging. It's, I was blessed with a name that kind of mirrors itself. Mike and Rick are two first names. You throw the ER on the end of Rick, and you've got kind of a memorable name, I guess.
Yeah. What was the format that you were at in Pensacola?
I've always been a rock radio DJ.
Always.
Except for the one right after high school that was called KLUB, the club.
Wow.
And that was I pick whatever I want to play type of station. We just had a bunch of records. It was not automated like it is now.
Right.
And so I was more into, this was like in the late 80s. I was more into like new wave and alternative, so that was the only like rock show that I didn't do.
Yeah.
Even in high school, the radio station was a heavy metal station. And so it was all, hard rock bands.
Yeah.
So, I've always felt like, well, there's probably going to be a time where they're going to, I'm not going to get hired at rock radio. I might be, top 40 or something like that. And I've always thought to myself, I can't do it. I could never do that. I could never fake it.
Yeah.
With the persona that I portrayed on the air. And unfortunately for most of you that never heard me, it was very, very real. It's always been me, but an alter ego, sort of an accentuated version of me.
Yep.
That's, a little more, getting after it and lower the voice and talk shit and make jokes and stuff. So,
right. What was the market size in Pensacola?
Pensacola was 126.
Wow.
At the time. And then I got hired in Tampa, which was market 18.
So that's a big jump, man. I mean, going from 128 to 18, that's a big market jump, and a big jump in money as well.
Well, I wouldn't say that, brother.
No?
They don't know. They don't pay you until they have to.
Yeah.
So the way it works is we're going to give you a platform. It's kind of like being a pro athlete. You get that rookie contract. You're going to make okay money. You're going to make less than $1 million a year on a rookie deal. But if you're still there after 3 years, which is about how long the rookie contract goes, then you can kind of name your price, right? So, it's all regimented. Like, this guy was a wide receiver who signed his 4th year, and this is how much he made. These were his stats, and now you're going to be making $7.5 million a year on a 5-year contract. So it was kind of like that, where I had to get ratings and become a household name. It's Bubba the Love Sponge, who did mornings at 98 Rock. Taught me one thing, very important. He said, you got to get them pregnant so they can't leave you.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, that's interesting. And I want to talk about Bubba, but just going back.
I don't, but
do you not?
Nah.
Yeah.
I'm good, man. The guy's an asshole.
Is he? Okay.
Let's be real.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody likes him. He got me fired. I got verification of that years later. And he just has a personality that's, self-important. But, don't want to talk about Bubba or badmouth him or anything. It's just he has a reputation. In my personal opinion, that's how I feel about him. I can't say that everybody feels the same way about him, but he was very, very difficult to work with.
Yeah. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry. I'm guessing you were pretty stoked to go from Pensacola to Tampa. I mean, was that a pretty big?
Well,
was that pretty exciting for you?
It was extremely, because all I ever really wanted the whole 4 years that I was in Pensacola, and years before that, was I wanted to be a major market radio guy.
Yeah.
And P-Cola just wasn't doing it for me. And you're kind of, when you're in a smaller market, you're not really appreciated for your talent. They're like, you're out there. You don't really fit, because it's a real, conformist sort of small market persona that they expect for you to have. And I was always a real risk taker. I was like, look, I'm going to be entertaining at the listener's expense sometimes, or at the caller's expense, I should say, not the listener.
Yeah.
And, a lot of, in this woke world where we are today, that shit would never fly, man.
Yeah.
But in the day, shock jocks were all the rage, and they were the guys who were excelling. And, I always felt like, well, I can only be me. I can't pretend to be the corporate, guy. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'll find something else to do. But it always worked, and I always got ratings. And so every time I got fired, which was 5 times, I got hired in a bigger market. making more money. Eventually, sometimes it was, like when I went from Tampa to Seattle, I made less money, but I knew, all right, it's just going to take me a couple years to get through this first contract, and then they're going to have to pay me. And that's exactly what happened is, I became a household name and the ratings were high. And as long as they're making money, they'll pay you money, and you want to have a good agent.
What years were you at 98 Rock?
In Tampa, 96 to 02.
96 to 02. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Who owned 98 Rock?
First it was J-Core.
Okay.
J-Core Broadcasting. And then we got acquired by Clear Channel Communications,
right?
Which then evolved into iHeartRadio.
Yep. And
they were the worst, man.
Oh,
it was horrible working for them. I fucking hated them.
Yeah, horrible.
And I hated the management style. I hated their whole system. It was a company run by attorneys who were backstabbers, who were bottom line driven only, stock price driven. And man, I'm talent. You know, I'm a creative.
Yeah.
There's got to be some room for that. There's got to be a certain degree of space.
Were you familiar? You familiar with the Power Pig?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that was J-Core.
It was, and they got they were part of the sale to Clear Channel.
Yeah.
Bubba was on the Power Pig. That's where he made his name really in Tampa.
Yep.
And that became the what was the same station, was the top 40 station in Tampa.
Yeah.
I forget the call letters
of Power Pig. WFLZ.
It was FLZ. They were down the hall from us.
Okay.
I hung out there with Nick Carter one night while he was on the air.
Really?
From Backstreet Boys.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. How was that?
And his girlfriend, Willa Ford. I partied with Nick a bunch of times. Really? He was from Tampa.
He's from Tampa. Yeah. That's exactly right. I didn't realize.
I didn't
realize he dated Willa Ford.
Yeah. This was like she was from Orlando, I think.
Okay.
Orlando's pop singer. And he had a buddy who he grew up with who had a rock band. And so he contacted us and, in hopes that we would, he had signed his buddy to his little fledgling label, Nick did, and hoped that we would, play the guy's songs. And so we ended up becoming friends. And then he went on tour for the Millennium Tour, and it was massive. I remember hanging out with him and, hundreds of screaming girls waiting at the door of the radio station that one night. Other times it was in Ybor City or whatever. We'd meet out and just, drink Jaeger and get fucked up. And it was a blast. Those were really, really good times. There was kind of an epidemic of Molly, ecstasy in Tampa at the time, tons of drugs. Now, I never did a lot of drugs myself. I've always been a stoner. I like, just pretty much like weed and maybe a cocktail here and there. But, being on the streets of Ybor City during like festivals like Guavaween and stuff and other areas of Tampa was just a bacchanal. Yeah. You go into the clubs and the whole place would just be blowing up.
Yeah. I'm from Tampa.
And it was,
I'm from Tampa.
You are from Tampa.
From originally.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm familiar with Guavaween and, Ybor City and, the whole nine. So was Nick a cool guy?
Super cool.
You still talk to him?
Yeah. He was down to earth. I don't know.
Yeah.
I left Tampa and I didn't keep in touch with anybody really from there. It was, life moves on, man.
Yeah, it does, man.
Some guys, like the other night I, went and hung out with the guys in Alter Bridge who were the, three of them were the original members of Creed from Tallahassee. They all went to Florida State.
Yeah, for sure.
I used to carouse Florida State because grew up in Pensacola. And, those
Tremonti,
dudes
right?
I've kept in.
Mark Tremonti?
Yeah, Tremonti. Yeah, it's cool. Yeah. He lives in Orlando now, but he showed me a picture of his home arcade, dude. He has 13 pinball machines in there.
That's not bad.
Dude's a pinball machine fanatic.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
I'm good. Actually, hold on. Check this out.
Yeah.
I got a picture. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. Where is it? Here it is. I have a picture of, that's me sitting on the couch.
Oh, yeah.
And that's Brian Marshall and Mark Tremonti of Creed.
Yep.
Time. And now they've been together for 30 years. First like 10 years of Creed, not even 10, 8 years of Creed, and then like 22 years or 20 years of Alter Bridge.
Yep. Yeah. I lived in Tallahassee for a while too. That was after Creed though. After Creed blew up. I was in Louisiana at the time, but yeah. So obviously those guys were there. So yeah, I'm pretty familiar with Creed. So,
cool.
Yeah, man.
They're great. I wish they go back on tour. They made great songs, man.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I didn't really want to talk about Bubba, but just for the people that know Tampa radio, when you look at Bubba in the mornings and Ricker at night, I mean, that's a pretty heavy lineup, man. I mean, that's pretty strong for, for a station. And, it was
a powerhouse rock station.
Yeah.
That's why we won the Billboard Radio Award, best rock station for the country. And then, Bubba got bounced, for after the pig incident, the slaughtered a pig live on the air for the redneck barbecue.
Yeah.
Cut the throat.
Yeah.
And they actually contacted me to come back and do mornings.
Really?
At 98 Rock. Yeah. But I was in full swing in Seattle doing afternoon drive, getting paid, and it just didn't work out. I stayed in Seattle.
Yeah. Why'd you get fired from 98 Rock?
Bubba. So, the story goes like this. I've never made this public, so
here we go.
This is exclusive.
I like it.
At the time, I had a girlfriend. She was very cute, very young, and not even 21. And every year, Bubba had this contest called the 12 Boobs of Christmas, where they would give away 6 sets of augmented breasts from a famous plastic surgeon named Dr. Dan Diaco. And my girlfriend at the time wanted some new boobs. And she entered the contest and she won. And I had nothing to do with it. I was like, what? This is your thing. Even the morning show, I was like, I don't want anything to do with it. This is separate from my radio career. And when she won, all the winners were expected to come into the studio and get photographed of their naked breasts.
Yeah.
And she refused. She was under 21. She's like, I'm not a stripper. I thought this was just a contest. I didn't know I was going to be expected to pose nude if I won, and she wouldn't do it. And so the morning show came to me and said, hey man, your girl's got to pose, for a photo. This is part of the competition. And I said, man, I have nothing to do with this. I don't want to get involved. I don't want to be, come in between you guys and her. This is entirely up to you and her. They were like, Ricker, you need to get her in here. And I said, I'm not doing that. That's unethical, first of all. And if a woman doesn't want to show her breasts, how can you make her do that? It's I don't know if it's even within the guidelines of the law, And so I was adamant about it. And about 2 weeks later, man, I got sent packing.
Wow.
And, I found out years later that, it was Bubba that called the hit, so to speak. And we were on good terms, but that one thing, turned him, against me. And I had been there for 6 years.
Wow.
And we crushed it, and suddenly I was gone. And that was the beginning, in my personal opinion. And it's my opinion that he had me fired. I can't verify that legally. But it's my opinion that that's when the radio station started its downfall.
Yeah.
Because it was a great rock radio station and heralded across the country. And so I left and I got hired 2 months later in Seattle, and that was it.
Yeah.
And within a year or so he was fired and it never recovered.
Yeah.
So, and I'll say this, a certain somebody from that radio station that I won't mention has told me numerous times that the biggest mistake he ever made in management was firing me.
Interesting, man.
So,
yeah.
But I did all right.
Yeah, no, nights were strong over there, man. It was go easy.
Go easy.
That's classic, man. Yeah. And then the Chinese, what was it? The Chinese pizza?
Chinese pizza.
Yeah.
Chinese pizza got pulled in Seattle around 2007.
Yeah, that wouldn't fly today, man.
No, not at all.
No, dude.
None of it would.
None of it would. Yeah, it was so funny.
I'm just waiting for the day where people go, they find my old bits and they just go, this guy needs to be canceled.
Right.
But the reality is that we were encouraged by Clear Channel Communications to be aggressively controversial.
Yeah.
So I was just doing what I was told.
Yeah.
And it worked. It made them money and it got me paid. And those were the times, things are different now.
Yeah, man. I was in high school in Tampa with, when the Power Pig was around, and I'm not sure if you were listening back then. So like 89, 90, that was the J-Core station. And that was when Bubba was doing nights. Dude, that station was out of control, man. I mean, it was crazy. I'm not sure if you ever listened back then, but
I didn't.
It was nuts, man. I mean, it was just crazy, the stuff that they were doing, especially on a top 40 radio station. It was insane.
Yeah, there was a lot of indecency,
Yeah.
to say the least. And that was never my thing. My thing was theater of the mind, creativity, impersonations,
Yeah.
storylines, narratives, just fun listening. But it was never at the expense of someone, and I think that whole thing was making fun of people who had ailments,
Yeah.
mentally challenged people and beyond. And so, it is what it is, man. There were good times, bro. But
Yeah.
I'm doing all right now. I'm not complaining.
Yeah, that's good, man. That's great to hear. Rickard, the girl that you were talking about earlier, the girlfriend who wanted the breast implants, is that the same girl that eventually got pregnant by one of the guys from Jackass?
No.
That's a different girl.
No, bro. Different girl.
Okay.
Yeah, I assume you want to hear that story too, you dirty bastard.
I mean, if you got it, sure. That's pretty random.
Yeah. So I moved to Seattle, and later in my run at Seattle, which lasted 7 years, I started dating a girl. She was Miss Teen Washington at one point, and when we started dating, she was like 21. And we were together for 3.5 years. And during that time, I got fired for a second time from KISW Seattle. And I took a gig doing afternoon drive in Portland at KUFO. And she came with me, and we were living there. And then I got fired there. And things weren't, as cushy as they were when you're the, afternoon guy on the radio. Your girl kind of loses the luster when you're just a normal dude on the couch again. So one day I come home and basically she's like, "Look, I'm pregnant." I'm like, "That's horrible news." She says, "No, you don't understand. It's not yours." Oh, great. So, that's how that went, and she ended up running away with the guy, one of the members of Jackass, and is married to him now with 2 kids.
Wow.
One of the dudes was from Portland.
Okay.
I forget his name. But the guy that she married was the founder of Jackass, and they live in California now.
Gotcha.
And he was there for some kind of event that the Portland guy was throwing, and they met in a restaurant, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty random, man.
That one hurt, man. So I put my place up for rent and went down to Brazil, bought a motorcycle, spent about 3 months combing the beaches, trying to come to terms with who I am, beneath all of the pomp and circumstance of being a celebrity, and a public figure. And eventually, you got to look in the mirror and just realize, yeah, okay, I'm an entertainer, just like any musician or actor or whatever. I'm a fucking human being, man. I sit on the toilet the same way everybody else does. There's really nothing special. Well, there is amazingly special things about every human being, but everybody's equal to some degree in the fact that we put our pants on the same way every day. And I had to come to that realization, and so it worked. I went down there and I had a real epiphany. It was really challenging because there was a lot of isolation, and I was used to being surrounded with people all the time, and being reaffirmed of how great I was, and that shit goes to your head, man.
Yeah.
Whether you are able to sequester it or not. And then I spent the next 5 years not working. I had assets that allowed me to live, and the whole time I was pretty much trying to figure out what I was going to do when I grow up, right? And so for a big birthday, I decided that I was going to go to Machu Picchu, and I met a buddy of mine from Tampa down there, and we were in the park on my birthday, and I met this guy. This guy started talking to me, and turned out he was American, and he's like, "Hey, today's your birthday. Oh, this is amazing. I have to give you something." And he gives me this little baggie of San Pedro. I'm like, "Oh, okay." So yeah, I don't know what it is. He says, "Well, this is a plant medicine. You want to mix it, and here's the setting you want to drink it." I'm like, "Cool." And he says, "While you're here, you have to do ayahuasca." I'm like, "I've heard of it." And this is about 8 years ago, but 7, but I've never done it, or, and I'm not familiar with it. And he said, well, this is your destiny. You should do it while you're in Peru. This is the epicenter of it. And so that night, my buddy and I were chilling in a hot springs, and I said, man, I just feel like I'm being called to do this ayahuasca thing, because we were going over to the coast for a week to surf. Had it all planned out, and I was like, let's pull an audible, bro. And we caught the next flight to Iquitos, this town on the precipice of the jungle, the Amazon. And we went into the town and met this dude, and he seemed like the right guy because he spoke some English. And we just threw caution to the wind and went into the jungle with him. It was like an hour pedicab drive, an hour boat ride, and then an hour hike to this ayahuasca retreat that was empty. And we brought a shaman with us that he knew, that we picked up along the way, and we did ayahuasca. And that's a whole nother story. But I came out of it, it lasted about 4 or 5 hours, and suddenly my buddy and I were lying next to each other, and you're back in reality just like that. And he goes, hey man, you there? And I'm like, yeah, just came out of it. He's like, me too. I said, how do you feel? He said, oh, I know exactly how I'm going to fix my life. I'm going to, call baby mama as soon as I get home. Blah, 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 blah. And he says, what about you? And I'm like, I don't really know. I've been, the last 5 years, I've been kind of soul searching and trying to figure out, what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. But I do know one thing is that I can't believe they call this medicine, because they call it plant medicine down there, and drink the medicine, take the medicine. And I'm like, man, I was just fucked up for 4 or 5 hours. And it was like mushrooms, acid, weed, coke, alcohol, Molly, all rolled into one.
Damn.
You don't really know what you're going to get, but I'm really interested. They call this medicine. So I come back, home. I was living in San Diego at the time, and I get a call a couple months later, and my buddy calls me from Seattle, and he says, hey man, what are you up to? I said, well, I'm just living down here trying to figure it out. He says, why don't you move back to Seattle and help me run my hash oil business that I started in 2010, because the state's about to go recreational. It's transitioning from medical to rec. And you'd be perfect because you were on the air. I always talked about weed, where other guys on the air were always drink, alcohol, shot of the day, whatever. I was always the dude that was 420, or when I did middays, it's high noon with Ricker. And so people would call up, smoke bowls. Ricker, what's up, gangster? Just smoking on some purple kush. Oh, what are you smoking out of there, big time Hugantinormous championship tasticism? I got the one-eyed, one-horn flying purple people eater here. Well, let's hear what that sounds like. Big time gangster, licious, Hugantinormous gangster. Happy high noon, Ricker. So
that's great.
So he's like, you always talked about weed, man. Why don't you come be in the weed business? And I'm like, you know what, bro? Give me a month and I'll be in Seattle, because Mother Ayahuasca just showed me that plant medicine is my destiny. And I moved back to Seattle, and I got into the weed business, and now I'm publishing the largest cannabis magazine in the world. I left that company after 3 years and partnered with Wes Abney, the founder of The Leaf. And this is what we do. This is our Northwest version.
Cool.
Called Northwest Leaf. Here's our Northeast version. Got Cheech and Chong on the cover. I had the distinct luxury with my friend Bobby Black, who spent 21 years at High Times Magazine, who now hangs his hat with The Leaf. He and I both got to interview Cheech and Chong for their reunion, and you can find all of it at leafmagazines.com. You can read every magazine there. And the podcast is Leaf Life Podcast on YouTube. It's V2 on Spotify. Just look anywhere you listen to podcasts. Check out Leaf Life. We're up to like 215 shows, and it's real. So, Mother Ayahuasca kind of led me down the path to cannabis, and now here I am, moving to Los Angeles in a couple months and taking the Leaf global.
What's the move to LA for?
So California Leaf has been there for 3 years.
Okay.
Been in publication. We need some firepower in Southern California.
Yeah.
And so I'm the guy,
Yeah. Where are you moving to in LA?
I'll be living near the airport.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll be flying like next year. I'm flying 20 times just for starters. I'll be coming back to Seattle regularly. We throw these events called Leaf Bowls on Insta. Look up hashtag the Leaf Bowl. And this is our new vertical. You know, we throw these amazing parties that are cannacentric, that are also our version of the High Times Cannabis Cup. And it's done with transparency and truthfulness, where a lot of competitions in the past have been pay for play, like the companies that spend the most money on the biggest sponsorships or whatever, win the best awards. That's not how it works with the Leaf. The Leaf is 100% transparent. So the best companies win, doesn't matter how much money you spend. And that's what the cannabis industry needs, is trust. If you know anything about this industry, trust has been diminished drastically over the years, just because, you know, any new commodities industry is going to be rife for carpetbaggers to come in and look for ways to, you know, use the industry to their advantage for monetary gain. And for people that use cannabis as medicine and have been their entire lives, that's not an option. You know, cannabis is a religion, so to speak, a sacrament. And so there's this big division between the Wall Street world, the green rush, and the real stoners.
Yeah.
You know, and so the Leaf is on the side of the stoners while doing some business, you know, with the big boys. We understand that that's how business is done. No big deal. But, you know, one thing that we never do is deceive or lie at the Leaf. We're all about reputation.
How many people make up the Leaf magazine?
Employees?
Yeah.
Got it across the country, about 45.
Okay. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Can you subscribe to the Leaf, or is it just, can people?
Yeah, you can get the Northeast version now by subscribing.
Okay.
Come to your mailbox every month, $7. Otherwise, it's free. Everything we do is free.
Yeah. Nice, man. Cool.
Yep.
How much weed do you smoke?
I smoke 5 days a week.
Okay.
And it's not really weed. I mostly do dabs.
Okay. Yep.
You know, concentrates. It's top shelf rosin.
Yeah.
It's you know, it's a press. There's no solvent. You know, like BHO is a butane extracted solvent.
Okay.
Solvent hash. And you can kind of taste the butane in it. You know, there's also CO2 extracted. There are different ways of extracting the cannabinoids and terpenes from the plant.
Yeah.
But the purest way is to create a solventless hash rosin. It's where they use high pressure and heat and squeeze the trichomes out of the existing hash, and it turns into a gooey oil. And then you vaporize that and dab it, much like in a vape cartridge. But we use a dab rig. There's one right here. It looks a lot like a bong. This is kind of a you know, cheap dab rig.
Yeah. I've never been to Seattle. Is that pretty easily accessible there?
Cannabis? Sure. It's everywhere, man. You walk down the streets, you smell weed.
Yeah. Yep.
It's a culture here. I mean, it always has been a culture, you know, everywhere. Just it's always been behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And it's bullshit, you know. And I don't know if I want to spend the next 30 minutes telling you about the corruption that's been in place since the 1920s. Cannabis was used as you know, an apothecary for, you know, thousands of years. They've found cannabis in Chinese tombs dating back 12,000 years. And, you know, the Navy even used it to make their ropes out of hemp. You know, animals ate hemp feed for hundreds of years. And for thousands of years, they've eaten hemp wild. So, you know, we ate the livestock, and people have had a strong endocannabinoid system because the cannabinoids from the animals that we've eaten. And it's been a part of our DNA since the Paleolithic period. But then William Randolph Hearst and the DuPont company kind of coalesced to create a situation where they had lobbyists lobbying for to make cannabis illegal, so that Hearst could eliminate hemp and use his miles and miles and miles of timber land to produce paper from trees, and DuPont to get into the petroleum industry and create pharmaceutical drugs and plastics and such. And they've kept cannabis illegal for the last 90 years by using propaganda. And now people realize, especially the younger generation, millennials and Gen Z, that, you know, dad never hit mom when he was stoned, just when he was drunk.
Right.
You know, and a lot of people use cannabis for a number of different ailments. My partner at Wham Oil, my hash oil company that I still own a piece of, which is out of business, unfortunately. Survived endometrial cancer 6 times by using Rick Simpson oil, taking 1 gram a day, and it shrinks tumors. In fact, I even had a piece of skin cancer, a basal cell on my face, and I'd gotten, I grew up surfing in Pensacola, and I've had, little skin cancers on my chest and shoulders and stuff here and there throughout my life. And this time I decided to use RSO, and I applied it to the little basal cell that was popping up. I even went to a dermatologist, said, yep, that's a basal cell. We're going to have to cut it out.
Yeah.
And so I applied their RSO to it once in the morning, once at night for 6 days. And by the 6th day, it was a small white scab, and I just flicked it off, and it was gone forever.
Amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
What's not to love,
Right.
Medicinally, recreationally, whatever, cannabis is here to stay.
Yeah.
And the leaf is heading the charge, in the way that I believe it needs to happen.
Yeah.
Which is with reverence for the plant and the community that drives it forward.
For sure, man. Well, good luck moving forward, and, good luck in LA. And yeah, man. Anything else you want to plug, Ricker? You plugged the Leaf, you plugged your podcast, Instagram, Twitter, anything else out there you want to plug?
Sure. My handle is Ricker DJ, DJ Delta Jupiter. And yeah, just follow us on the Leaf, man. Go to leafmagazines.com. Everything you need is right there. We've got new content every day. You can get the podcast there, the Leaf Life podcast. I also write a column called Stony Baloney, which you can see in the inside back cover of every magazine. Here's an example right here for you. Boom. That's Stony Baloney.
There it is.
And this current episode is called Fuck Baby Shark.
I like it. Who's the artist?
Right. The guy that does the art is Joshua Boulay.
Okay.
You can find him on Instagram as well under Joshua Boulay, but he's really talented.
Yeah, it looks pretty dope.
Does really fun stuff. He's done some covers for us and stuff. So, High Times, wrote the narrative of cannabis culture for 45 years in the black market, the legacy market. And they got acquired by a hedge fund in 2017 and stripped the culture out of the magazine. And that's where the Leaf kind of picked up the fumble.
Gotcha.
And ran to the opposite end zone. And we acquired 6 senior staffers from High Times when they furloughed them, their print staff. So, we've kind of got this, really special unit that's unstoppable.
Very cool, man.
So you're going to, if you've never heard of us before, you're going to hear of us eventually because, we have a mission and with a real purpose, and it's a lot of fun. Cannabis can save the world from, a commodities standpoint with hemp, and from a medicinal standpoint with cannabis. Hemp bioremediates the soil, which bioremediates the air. It can resolve climate crisis by replacing, cutting down trees with growing very sustainable hemp all over the country, the world. And all this information is available on the internet, and it's going to become even more available and more accessible and consumable in the coming years.
Rock on.
As the government finally has to acquiesce to the demands of the public, because 80% of people want cannabis legal for some reason.
Yeah. Right.
60% for recreational.
Yeah.
So, why isn't it legal?
I know, it's crazy.
Well,
man.
I can tell you. Yeah. I can tell you, brother. It's because the current system is extremely profitable.
Yeah.
And if you throw a wrench in that and have something that replaces it that is not as profitable, then the whole economy is at risk. And then our military is at risk. And, there's a reason why they're not replacing pharmaceuticals, alcohol, and tobacco with cannabis. But eventually they're going to have to. And they will when they're able to monetize it.
Sure.
The government, double dips. They tax us 10% on cannabis products, yet there's 30,000 prisoners behind bars for cannabis related offenses. I just read an article yesterday where a woman in California was just found just accused and put into jail, charged with distributing fentanyl from China, like 2 tons of it or something like that. And she tried to blame it on her housekeeper, right? And it's like she's getting charged for 20 years.
Wow.
There's people in prison for 30 years for a gram of weed.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's bullshit, and the government's profiting heavily on it, because the privatized prison system is very profitable. The all of it, man. So you get the gist.
Yeah.
We're coming to save the day at the Leaf.
I dig it, man. Last question for you, Ricker, then I'm going to let you go, man. Just curious. How much Nirvana were you playing at KISW in Seattle?
Too much.
I was just curious.
It wasn't just Nirvana.
Yeah.
It was Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, it was Pearl Jam, all those guys. You know, I'm friends with somebody from every one of those bands. Now it's weird, you know. Growing up in Pensacola, even, you know, during the in the early 90s when I was on the air at TK 101, you know, you idolized those musicians, you know, and to have ended up coming to Seattle, and, you know, I'm really good friends with Chris Cornell's little sister. I'm good friends with Sean Kinney from Alice in Chains. I'm good friends with Mike McCready from Pearl Jam. You know, you get to know these guys and you realize, fuck, dude, they're just people. They just had their own meteoric rise.
Yeah.
That came out of nowhere, and they had to deal with that, you know, and Kurt and Lane and Chris, you know, some of those guys didn't handle it very well. You know, Seattle's a very passive aggressive culture. People here this is the saddest city. Don't ever move to Seattle.
I'm
FYI.
not. No.
This is just recently the U.S. Census Bureau did like a survey or something and found Seattle to be the most unhappy city in the country.
Wow.
That's less happy than Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Minneapolis, you know, Detroit. What is it?
Right.
Flint, Michigan. You know, what is it about Seattle that people are so fucking unhappy? I don't know, but I'm getting the hell out of here.
I hear you, man.
But, you know, it made for great music.
Yeah, for sure.
You know,
yeah, absolutely.
Kind of like why London, like why England is so, you know, such a prolific, artistic, you know, musically artistic city, because the weather sucks.
Yeah. And
the weather sucks in Seattle.
Yeah.
And these guys that grew up here, and it was kind of a dirty city back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And, you know, they didn't know how to handle celebrity or attention. And so what they thought they wanted was the worst thing that ever happened to them, and it drove them nuts. And some of them, you know, took their own lives, either, you know, inadvertently through heroin or with a shotgun to the head, man.
Yeah. Well, dude, you're heading to
Chris hung himself.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, no, very sad, man. Yeah, very sad, but definitely some great music that, you know, came out of Seattle, obviously. But yeah, dude, you're heading to SoCal where there's sunshine. So yeah, man, best of luck to you the rest of the way, and good luck with the Leaf and, you know, everything that you got going on. And again, man, thanks for taking time out of your day to come on to the podcast and share your stories. They were great.
My pleasure, Clif. Thank you very much. And any of you guys listening and looking, thank you very much. Appreciate you very much. And I wish you all the blessings in the world.
Cool. Thanks, Ricker. Appreciate it, man.
All right, brother.
All right, buddy. Peace.